let's take a look at the SH MonsterArts Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire Godzilla 2024, and see if he's worth adding into your collection. Starting off with the detail, I have to admit, this is the fourth version I've owned of this figure. I owned the original 2019, the 2021, the Burning Godzilla 2019, and now this, and I have to say, I'm really pleased with this figure. The sculpt is very nicely detailed. It's got depth. It's got all the details that you would want on a legendary Godzilla, besides it not being accurate. The tail here, still super detailed. It kind of does get a little, the sculpt gets a little soft here towards the end, but the bottom of the tail has always been a pleasure to look at. I don't know why, but I mean, that's all Godzilla's. They just kind of got that different texture on it. It's super satisfying as a design. We've got the stamp and legal information, and even the bottom of the feet still have the detail from earlier on. As you can see here, that back sleeve on the tail is tucked under the legs and the pelvis, which I actually think is not good for the articulation of the legs, but we'll get to that a little bit later. And the legs are just detailed. The toes are painted, the fingernails are painted this time, which they normally weren't in the past, and they look pretty damn good. The one thing about this figure that's kind of weird is that they chose more of a Heisei Godzilla color, and there's no paint. There's almost no shading, no nothing. It's just a Heisei Godzilla gray-black, and I gotta say, it looks really good with this blue. Now the face. Yes, the head is small. Yes, the head is inaccurate. Yes, the jaw doesn't close. Very true. Very, very true. All completely acceptable critiques. But I have to say, mine doesn't look as bad as some of the other ones that are coming around. The teeth on mine are actually pretty damn good. The one thing that's still the same across all of these, though, is that tongue is just sitting a little too high, so it can't close. Now, these dorsal plates are the best thing about this figure. I think these are the best dorsal plates out of all of them, besides maybe the poster version, but I'm not going to comment on a figure that I didn't own. But personally, out of the ones I've owned, these are the best. I love the blue that they chose. I love that it's got silver tips. I also like that there's like the silver veins painted onto the dorsal plates, although it is inconsistent and it's not all of them. It's kind of random. So if you don't like asymmetricalism on it, you're not going to like this. It personally doesn't bother me too much. Obviously, I would like it to be a little bit more uniform, but it's not as bad. And it continues all the way down to the tail. There's a little bit of bleed onto the skin here, almost like it's glowing. And it just looks very, very nice. It's sharp. I love these dorsal plates on this MonsterArts. I have since the original, and I still do today. I think this is a very nice looking legendary Godzilla for this MonsterArts sculpt. Alright, moving on to the articulation. Very impressed. So the top of the head can move all around, all the ways you need it to. That jaw is still kind of limited, doesn't open up quite as wide as it should because of the tongue, once again. But what they did do is they made this second neck joint way more movable. It can almost look down and it can look straight up. It doesn't need an extra piece to look all the way up. It can just do it on its own. Wow. Just like any articulator figure probably should be able to do. The one thing it doesn't have, though, is a lot of left to right movement. You really have to use the other joints in the waist and body to do it. So not as great there, but it's definitely not as bad. The first chest joint isn't too terrible, and it kind of gets hindered / helps these shoulder joints, which are still kind of goofy. They can go all the way forward, but you have to twist and turn them to get the arms in the positions that you want. Still better than home, in my opinion. The elbows can go to a 90-degree angle, and they feel super flush this time. The wrist are your normal ball pegs. You know, they've got the swivel, and then they got the ball joint that moves. The arms can almost go in a little bit. You could cross his arms if you turn them at the elbow, which is kind of impressive. This second waist joint here is super, super tight on mine. It is able to move. The 2021 that I owned and the 2019 that I owned before this were really articulated. They moved a lot. I just try to get it flush here with this until I get it in a bath and soak it for a little bit, hopefully to loosen up this joint. The hips are normally really, really good. I'll show it later. This slip cover actually on mine is limiting the articulation quite a bit. It's almost got no back range and it's almost got no forward range because of it. But it still retains its almost splits like articulation range, so that's pretty cool. The knees, very thankfully, can go almost to a 90-degree angle, and they're very smooth. Both ankle joints are tight on mine, which I actually have been able to loosen up a little bit since after the review, since I've been playing with it. The tail articulation got really improved, a little bit of re-engineering technically, to make it to where it can almost come all the way around, and by other people's photos it actually can go farther than that. I'm just not pushing mine yet to the maximum, just because it's still a little tight even after 2 days. You can almost get it into a Heisei Godzilla tail swipe, but it still can't do it. Legendary Godzilla's tail really doesn't do it as well. So it does go flat. So you can get him in a swimming pose, flying pose if you want to have a zero gravity scene. But just like the hips, this tail cover is actually really limiting their articulation. You can actually see there where it's rubbing up against the thigh, causing damage to the thigh and that tail swipe. So I've got to figure that out, why it's so different on this figure. But if we drop that, I'm actually really impressed with their articulation range and the small improvements that they made to make this thing even more articulated, even if the sculpt's a little goofy looking. So starting off with accessories, we have the claw hands, which are always welcomed on our Legendary Godzilla. Very, very happy that these were included. Very nice. We have the Atomic Breath jaw mouthpiece, which very thankfully mine, unlike quite a few others out there, the teeth aren't painted as bad. The front row of teeth are still, they look like one big old tooth, but it's not as bad as some others. It's still a very nice and welcome piece. Here we have the Atomic Breath, which looks nice. I think it's the best looking one out of the ones I've owned. Mine does have that little dent. It almost seems like it's intentional to kind of make it a little bit more straight aimed. There was the peg for a Tamashi stand. It looks nice. It starts off a little bit darker at the tip, and then it gets lighter the farther it goes, kind of like it's losing energy or it's hottest at the end. It also has this like kind of white silver wash here a little bit at the end, or a lighter blue. You know, I can't tell with my color deficient eyes, but it looks nice. I'm definitely pleased with it. Now, attaching your hands are pretty easy. You sit here and you pull on it until you hear the pop, and then you take your other hand and you push it on until you hear the next pop, which should sound just like this. Boom, and your claw hand is attached. Now, I did struggle with the jaw here a little bit. As you can see, I actually got the jaw to open up wider because I dislocated it. Pop, came right out. And then I've always struggled with putting the jaw in again. So admittingly, the jaw's not all the way in. I also don't recommend pushing the jaw all the way in. It's fine just kind of sitting there like that. Although, honestly, I don't think you really need to use it. It kind of looks a little goofy. A little bit. It's mainly for the aiming up into the sky pose, so it can not use a stand. Otherwise, I would just say use the normal jaw and it's fine. My final thoughts on this Godzilla 2024 is actually really positive. I'm not disappointed at all. I'm really satisfied with the product. I'm satisfied with the body color, even though it doesn't have any paint, and it's not really Legendary Godzilla accurate. I'm really satisfied with the blue and the silver highlights on the dorsal plates. The articulation got improved, and the accessories are basically the bare minimum that we would kind of expect from a Legendary Godzilla release so far. And of course, the breath effect makes sense because he's got the atomic charge in the back. Do I recommend picking this up? If you have any of the other 2019s, probably not necessary, but if you don't have any at all and you're not really interested in Haya, I definitely do recommend this Godzilla 2019. Thank you guys for watching. Please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.